Welcome to DigitalK.
I'm going to go a little bit deeper, so more of a sniper in one area. And that area is called purpose. It's probably something that you're hearing a little bit more about. And it's, as was introduced, it's getting into the why you're in business in the first place and what that actually means and what you have to offer the world besides just making money, which we all want to do. And there's nothing wrong with that. So building and sustaining what we call purpose has never been more important. Now, the company I work for, Edelman, has two pieces of intellectual property research that we produce every year. One is called the Trust Barometer, and the other is called Earn Brand. And they're starting to merge together. And what we're seeing is when we're asking people, so the most recent study was 2018, and we have another one coming up. But in terms of trust, most of the people that we talk to, well over 50%, told us that they feel like the system is failing them. That there's a sense of injustice, that there's a lack of hope. And this is interesting in the United States because we've had one of the best economies that we've seen in a long time. Now, almost half of the people that we talked to said brands, private companies, because system is government, that actually private companies can do more to solve society's problems. And over half told us that they actually have better ideas than the country's government. And we talk about this idea of buying on belief. And you know which generation made this popular? Anyone want to take a guess? Starts with the letter M. Millennials. Millennials started this. So when you go to the store and you see things like free trade, or you look at things and things on packages say this was ethically sourced, we did not harm anyone in making this product, it is one of the reasons why these companies do this, because they know that consumers are actually, they want their product to be good for them, to taste good, to enjoy it, but they also are more interested in how it's being produced as well. And we've seen an increase in this year over year. And this is not actually just limited to millennials. So this is looking at 2017 versus 2018. It's looking at it in different countries, even in countries like China. You're actually seeing where consumers are increasingly buying on belief. They want to know what the companies that they purchase things from, that they have relationships with, what those brands actually stand for, beyond just the goods and services that they sell. This is really interesting. We asked consumers across all these different countries, what matters more, the product features or what they represent and what they stand for? And it was almost a statistical heat, dead heat almost, 44% versus 43%. This isn't heard of in the world of branding. This has never really existed before. Usually it's about how the brand makes you feel emotionally and the product features, but a brand actually standing for something is basically as important as the product features itself. And it's even more important at the moment of sale. That's why I use that example of you're sitting there looking at the shelf and you're starting to look at the labels and you might look at, was this ethically sourced, or things along that lines. At the moment that you make a decision, if you're presented with two choices, you may be likely to actually make the choice based on, I like how this business operates. Brands like Starbucks have been doing this for years. American brands like Ben & Jerry's have been doing this for a long time. You see brands like Patagonia that really understand this and really lean into the space very heavily. Why should this group care? This is a technology conference. Well, you can't go, seems like a day now, in the US without some conversation around big tech, as we call it, and looking at companies like Facebook and people asking, should Facebook be regulated? Do they have too much power? Are they a force for good in the world? By the way, I think Facebook is a great platform. I use it regularly. I'm involved in many communities. But I understand why these questions are being asked. If you haven't read a book called The Four by Scott Galloway, you should get it because he looks at all these big tech companies and he looks at them not just for the innovation that we admire, but also for how they are influencing society, good, but also bad and ugly as well. This is a headline that just popped up yesterday. So this is the McKenzie Bezos, the ex-wife of Jeff Bezos, the richest man in the world, who is giving away a significant portion of her wealth, billions and billions of dollars, to charities. And what was interesting was that one of the headlines that came up was kind of negative. So there's a movement, and it's really gaining a lot of steam in the United States, that's actually making the case, well, philanthropy is great, but can billionaires solve the world's problems? And so there's a lot of conversation around this. There's a lot of people asking the question, well, that's a good thing to do, but really isn't it just a drop in the bucket? If you have systemic problems, you need systemic solutions. But I'm not going to talk to us about philanthropy because that's actually a different thing. We should be asking ourselves a question that we should all be asking ourselves, whether you're a small business or a large business, is would the world miss you if your business didn't exist? That is the question to ask yourself. Would they miss you? And if the answer is yes, why would they miss you? And if the answer is no, why wouldn't they miss you? And really, the answer to that question is digging into your purpose, which is essentially, this came up in the previous one, this is a little bit, goes into a little bit more depth. Your purpose is simply why you're in business or why you should be in business in the first place. It begins to answer that question of why. And it really exists to answer, to address three different things. The business that you're in, the impact that you make. Now, impact can be a number of different things. The money that you make, your profit, that's financial impact. Of course, that's high on our list. But also there can be impact to society. And there's also the impact that being in business makes on your brand. I just mentioned a few brands that we all know, Starbucks, etc. So impact is a three-dimensional word. Then there's this third component. It's the change that you ignite. And that change can be a positive or a negative. Look at a space that Jeremiah has covered at length, is the gig economy. First 3 to 4 years of the gig economy, nothing but positive. Last 2 years, you started to see people asking questions about, is this really good? Now you have all these people who are working without any health care and they're working 30 hours a week doing a gig job. Is that good for society? That did not exist 5 years ago. These are questions that are being asked now. So there is a direct connection to technology. But it also presents what I call a paradox, because what a lot of companies are doing as they become more aware of these dynamics is they're trying to do good in the world as a way to build their brands, but they're not doing it authentically. I just use Uber as an example. I'll use Airbnb as an example, which has had their own issues. And they're actually an example of a brand that will go out and say, we understand why we exist. It's to give people the opportunity, give everyone the opportunity to travel the world. But they've had a lot of issues in the past because it's a marketplace and you can't fully control a marketplace. They've had discrimination issues in the past. So the paradox is actually living your purposes and talking about your purposes, and doing it in a way that is true and authentic and also ownable to your brand. So something like we like to talk about, I'm not sure how many of you saw this Pepsi advertisement where essentially, and they probably had their hearts in the right place, there was a lot of discourse in the country, there were a lot of demonstrations happening when we had the election. And when Pepsi put out this advertisement where they had Kylie Jenner, and this was sort of the moment where she's actually handing Pepsi to some type of authoritative figure, a lot of people looked at that and said, right now the country's at a little bit of a difficult spot. People are out in the street, and Pepsi's making an ad about people being in the street, and the ad just fell flat, right? So we talk about that as co-opting culture. Take a moment in time in culture that everybody's thinking about, and then the brand jumps into it. They had good intentions, it just didn't come off right. What we need to do in this space is to be creating culture, and one of the brands that we really feel like, and their client as well, but that has been doing this for years, is the brand Dove. So for at least the past decade, with their Real Beauty platform, they have been standing for and challenging and creating a dialogue around how women perceive themselves and dimensionalizing beauty as more than just how a woman looks. And they have stayed true to that purpose, and that is in everything that they do. So to avoid this purpose paradox, brands must earn trust through creating value in culture. And we're going to get deep into that and how that's done, and I'm going to give you an example of it. So creating this value is not easy to do. And it's not easy to do because it involves two different things that are sometimes at odds with each other and are also difficult to get to. It's this intersection between truth and tension and bringing them together. Now, in the world of brand building, and again, I'm using brand as a catch-all word because brands, everything is a brand. Every company is a brand. So when I use that word brand, don't turn off the part of your brain that goes, I'm not a marketer. If you're in technology, you're a marketer as well because you have to get the word out. So truth has three dimensions. There's the truth about your brand. There's your customer truth. We just heard about Zappos, a very customer-centric company who, by the way, their purpose is built around the customer. And more recently, there's societal tension. As we have people that are looking to companies, yes, I want a great product and experience, but I also want to feel like you're doing some good in the world as well. That's increasingly important to you. So these three dimensions of the brand truths, and then also the tension that exists between them. And that's how you actually get to where the magic is in this space. So a question that we ask brands when we're working with them, in terms of how they can actually find their why and bring that out to the world and live it, live their values, live what they stand for, offer a great product and experience, and also do it in purposeful ways. We ask them, what stands in the way of your mission? Every company has some form of a mission statement. The thing about those mission statements is that they're oftentimes an ideal. It's what the world should look like versus what the world actually does look like. So that is sort of a state of nirvana. Not to be confused with Nirvana Beach, which I found out about a few days ago. I didn't visit it, I just heard about it. So what stands in the way? This is a key question that we ask. And answering that question gets to what we call a cultural purpose platform. So I just mentioned Dove and what they've been doing for the past over a decade with Real Beauty. Real Beauty is a cultural purpose platform. Dove sells all kinds of beauty products, all kinds of soaps, and for both men and women, but specifically for the women target, their platform, their cultural purpose platform is Real Beauty. And they bring that platform to life in a number of different ways. Sometimes in big advertisements that you might see on television, sometimes much smaller activations, but they stay true to it. And the thing about a cultural purpose platform, and the thing about purpose, is that it's this fusion between reputation and relevancy. So relevancy is key for brands. If a brand is not relevant, the brand is dead. If it's not talked about, if it's not seen, if it's not heard, if there's not an impact in culture, you don't have a brand. But, and I use the example of Patagonia, it's also the reputation. It's also the reputation of that brand. It's how it's talked about beyond it just being relevant in culture. So this idea of why you exist in the world and what your purpose is the connection. It's the intersection between a brand's reputation and also a brand's relevant. It's the two. And if you work for a big company, how many people here work for a mid-size or a larger company? Okay, maybe a little bit less than a fourth of you. So in these worlds, the communication department is what? Reputation. The marketing department is relevancy. Sometimes those departments don't even communicate. Sometimes those departments actually do this. So when we're talking about this space, they come together. So I wanted to show you an example. This is actually something that I personally worked on. I had a lot of passion for. This is a product called GoGo squeeZ. And so everything I just told you, you thought, well, this is what GoGo squeeZ is. It's basically, it is applesauce and vegetable puree in a pouch. It's for younger kids or maybe even tweens. And you would say, yeah, what would the purpose be for that product? They're not a company like Patagonia. What could they stand for? Well, turns out they could stand for something very definitive. What we did was we started with the brand mission. And like I said earlier, a mission sometimes or oftentimes is that ideal state. So they stated their mission as to make it easier for kids and families to be healthier and happier every day. How many of you have mission statements that feel similar to this? Show of hands. Something like this. positive. Does it really mean anything? I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. But we asked them, the first thing we said, is this true? And they said yes, because if it wasn't true, we would start from here. But they said it was true. So we built a foundation around that. Then next we asked, okay, what gets in the way? What gets in the way of healthy and happy kids and also families as well? Now, this might not be true in Eastern Europe, but in the United States, parents are pretty busy. And they actually want to, they take their kids to soccer, and they take their kids to baseball, and they take their kids to dancing. Jeremiah is definitely this type of parent. And what happens is kids are so busy learning new things that they just don't have time to just be a kid. That is something that, and actually, technology has made that worse because we did some research and we found that, guess why parents are overscheduling their kids? Phones. They don't want them on their phones. So they're loading up their schedules with all kinds of things to do. So we found an opportunity in this. We said, there's an opportunity for kids to just be kids, to go from doing to just being. And that is something that as a brand, even a consumer packaged good brand like yourself can get behind. So we redefined their purpose. And we started here. We took that mission, and that became the foundation because they said, this is our mission. We said, this is true. We're going to build on that. But they didn't have a clearly defined set of values as a brand and as a business. We said, let's put those values into words. Be healthy, be yourself, be in the moment, be outside. They said, we stand for all these things. We said, great, let's put that to writing. Then the next thing we did is said, let's summarize that. And this isn't going to be in an advertisement, but let's summarize that into a statement that everyone in the company and brand can get behind. And we ended up with this: to nourish the natural instincts of kids to simply be. And then we brought that to life with a activation calling Be Time. And I'm going to show you the video. I'm running a little tight on time, but we're going to get through it. If you can play the video, one more. These are real parents. They didn't realize that they were signing up for this. You'll see what happens. These are actual parents and real kids. We tricked them.
Welcome. Come on in. I'm James, and I'm here to find out about you and your busy schedule. Why don't you walk me through what a week for you looks like?
Whew. Generally, there's at least 2 soccer practices.
They do football, it's from like 6 to 8.
Science club at the library.
Oscar takes coding.
Math prep class.
Baseball.
Chess. Volleyball.
Lacrosse.
Boxing.
Taekwondo.
Choir rehearsal.
Soccer.
Girl Scouts.
After that's done, they'll come home and do their homework.
What kind of lessons do you think she learns from all these activities? What are you hoping she'll learn?
I'm hoping that she'll learn to stay busy.
Would it surprise you to know that kids today have less than 30 minutes of unstructured time a day?
That would not surprise me at all.
Do you feel like you had more of this kind of free time when you were a kid?
No, it was definitely
not like that.
way more free time.
Yeah.
How much unstructured time a day do you think your kids have?
Let's say a lot of saying
Do you think? I don't think it's a lot.
You found the robot?
We call it be time. It's time for kids to do whatever they feel like doing. No plans, no structure. Being outside is good, being active is good, but be time isn't just one thing. It can be whatever they choose. Nobody's teaching kids anything, but they're still learning some important things. They end up with all sorts of extra skills: problem solving, conflict resolution, creativity, even dealing with stress. Research has shown if kids don't get be time, they don't have a chance to learn coping skills and discover just who they are and what they love to do. Kids without be time suffer more anxiety, stress, and depression. The good news is it's an easy fix. You just need to start making more time for be time. We actually have a video to show you of your kids. We kind of introduced today as a chance for them to have these structured activities, but actually we went the opposite way. We gave them some unstructured play time. We want to show you what they did with that.
Look at him.
Look at all of them.
A social butterfly.
She's not gonna want to go home.
No.
I can't wait to hear about it on the way home.
So this wasn't about the brand taking a political stance. This was about the brand making a choice of, we could be the product, and by the way, this is a flooded category. There's all kinds of brands out there. So they made a choice. We could be the product that parents feel good about, that I'm giving my kids something pretty healthy to eat, or we could be the brand that stands for kids being kids. And look at the expressions on those parents' faces. When they smiled and they saw their kids just being kids, those were real reactions, and those were real parents. And that's the choice that they're making. They want to stand for kids being kids. And that is now part of their marketing strategy, right? So they're taking their values, and they built up a whole campaign. There were television spots. They put up their values out to the outside world. They created this thing called the B list. They took some of the research and put that out there. And it was all based on that. We want to be the company that stands for letting kids be kids. We want them to be outside. We want them to be healthy socially. We want them to be active. We want them to just be a kid. I already hit this. So people picked up on this. It stood out. It caught people's attention because they weren't just talking about how much sodium was in their products. That's something that they talk about as well, or how much sugar was in their products. But people took notice because this was a conversation that parents in the United States are ready to have. That's why they started paying attention to it. Just like those parents that we saw earlier, parents are questioning themselves, do I need to be making some different decisions with my kids? So I'll end with the question that I started with earlier. Would the world miss you if your business or brand didn't exist? And if the world does miss you, why? That's your purpose. And if the world doesn't miss you, and by the way, if someone can fill that void, that's your number one competitor.